everything, this should work. Share. Can we see that chart?
Yes, sir. I hear you.
Okay. This is a chart of month-over-month inflation. As you can see, here's the start of the pandemic. And here is the peak, which, is in June, which would correspond to those energy prices. Because there's a little bit of a delay. Crude oil has to get turned into gasoline and usable things and dumped into the market. So, there's a lag with that. Notice we were all the way up here, chugging along at an annual rate of 1.3%. Notice here, now we're actually below zeros right here, so we are actually a little bit below zero. Now, stayed extremely elevated, where we had the spike, but it kept coming back. The real question is, as long as we keep energy prices below $100 a barrel, it seems to me that we're going to be able to keep this number down, and that's going to eventually wear off that annualized rate. But we're really getting into the Goldman Sachs level of the weeds here, because this is the real-time picture of inflation. Everyone's going to talk about, well, inflation's this, inflation's that. Well, that CPI number is a backwards-looking number at what it was. If it continues to decline, and this number, the chart I have up here, is what it actually is. Okay? So, as long as this number stays down and the PPI numbers stay down, the problems with inflation should slowly move away.
Sterling,
I'm not saying it's going to
and officially get us kicked off here today. And I hope wherever you're at, it's as nice as it is here in Southern Illinois. Christy, have you hit the record button yet?
Yes, I have.
Our recording. All right. Great day here in Southern Illinois. It's one of those days that you get up in the morning. I hope your coffee is hot, and I hope you're enjoying the day. It's got a hint of fall in the air. When we got up this morning, didn't feel that humidity. The dew was pretty heavy. You just kind of look out across things and you kind of get that sigh of relief from these hot days of summer. I hope they're gone for good. I doubt they are, but a great day around here, and I hope it is where you're at as well. We're going to try to have some fun today. We're going to try something a little different. If it doesn't work, we're gonna go away from it. I ordered the game Kahoot. So Liz and Ricky are on here, and they got to play this, and so there's no excuse for them missing any of these questions. And on the back end of that game, it's going to take 8 or 9 minutes. We're going to get through it very quick. You're going to learn some facts about Sterling and Mike. So Mike and Sterling, you guys need to be very fearful about the questions I have entered in this game this week. Sterling and I are going to kind of break down the game after we're done. Then we're going to turn it over to Mike, because we are at this critical time when we're looking at yields, and we're really in this key soybean season as far as growing conditions over the next 60 days. It's going to be a little later, I think, Mike, than it has been in the past when we're watching those rains come across. So I'm going to really turn it over to Mike for a big portion of this. So bear with me. And I'm going to try to share my screen. We're going to try to Kahoot very quickly. Let me tell you how this game works. First off, if you've got your cell phone, please have your cell phone. If you've got internet, and if you don't, stay with us because you're going to have fun anyway. I want you to go to Kahoot.it. You don't have to type in www. That's Kahoot.it. I'm going to try to share my screen now. Christy, I don't think maybe I've got the ball to be able to do that. For some reason, that's gone away from me.
I'm passing
No, I haven't.
All right.
I just passed it back to you.
Let's see if we can get there. We will try. All right, let me try again. If I can find what I need to find on here. Ah, yes, here it is. Okay. KAHOOT.IT. That's all you got to do. And what we're going to do is once you get there, on your screen, we are going to have a code, and the code is loading right now. It's your game pin. It's 185550. 185550. Now it's going to ask you for a nickname. Come up with something colorful. Make it clean, but come up with something colorful. Don't put Christy if your real name is Christy. You can use your initials. Ah, look at this. Look at this. I like it. I like it. Oh, they're getting better. You guys, yeah, this is awesome. All right, and don't be too cool to play because this is going to be fun. And we don't have cash prizes, but I bet you I can talk Christy into getting you some ASNA merchandise in the mail. Christy, what do you think?
We could probably figure something out.
All right, so it looks like so far we've got 7 participants. I'm going to give everybody just a little bit more time. I want you to try this with us because it is fun if we can do it. Best agent ever.
I like that one.
Few more minutes. Again, it's Kahoot, KAHOOT.IT. The code to get in is 185550. And what we're going to do is, this is a fun game. There are no right or wrong answers. Just going to poll the audience on a couple things, and they're going to be true, false. They're going to be multiple choice. Don't put too much thought in the answers. You got 20 seconds to answer each question. I think, banana squish. I like it. Okay, 4, 8, 9. I'm going to go ahead and go, okay? I'm going to go ahead and go. And we're going to start it. Okay, everybody's going to have fun, right? Here we go. All right. Now, each one of these questions is going to relate to something Sterling and I are going to talk about briefly. Get ready, get set. I know this is exciting. Are you ready? Which political issue threatens agricultural markets? We've got Russian invasion of Ukraine, potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan. And actually, we'll go ahead and play this one. I think I started the wrong game. Let me back up real quick. I'm sorry. You're going to get mad at me, Christy. You're going to get mad at me here. We're going to start this thing all over because I do have the wrong game on here. Bear with me. Bear with me. I got excited. I get excited about this. We're going to try it all over again. So bear with me. And naturally, my internet would slow down right about the time I needed to kick in. So remember those colorful names, because that didn't take long at all. I'm going to log in, and we're going to get started again. I probably could have backed out a different way, and I hit the X button, but I wanted it to be the one that I designed for today, because it does have some things I know Sterling will want to talk about here shortly. Right, we're almost there. Go to my library. We're going to go to ASNA Edge. Here we go. August marketing meeting. That sounds better. All right. I'm going to share my screen one more time if I'm not already sharing. Am I sharing yet? No, I'm not sharing. Here we go. All right. If you go to that Kahoot.it, Kahoot.it, I promise this will be good. Just bear with me. 903846 is your new game pin. So see those players again. Got to maintain the enthusiasm, Christy.
Let's go, everybody.
Oh, somebody, we got a crop office. I like it. And we had a couple join us late, so that they can throw it. Oh yeah, I like it. I like it. Keep on. There we go.
All right.
Now we're open. Got a couple more. Come on.
You have to redo it, everybody.
You'll have to redo it. Just go into Kahoot.it, unless you're already on the screen here. You're going to enter 903846.
You may have to hit refresh at the top. So you may have to go back up to the top and hit refresh.
Got most everybody that was on here before. We got a couple of them that aren't. I know. I messed up.
There you go.
Let's get a couple more on here. And since I did this, Christy, let's make it even better. I know you had something awesome in your mind, but let's make that prize awesome. How about that?
Okay.
For the inconvenience of playing twice, I'm going to give about 30 more seconds, and then we're going to roll. See, look, we got a few more though to play the game.
I am going to ask, is everybody hearing Brooks okay? Yeah, Brooks, you're still sounding kind of sketchy.
Okay, I will. Let's see what we can do here. I am.
Now you're sounding okay.
Okay, let's try that. There was some audio on the internet. Let's see if it helps out with that.
Better?
That's way better. I don't
Okay.
know what you just did, but that's way better.
All right, I turned the audio down, so I think that's going to help. I'm going to actually. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, again, no right or wrong answers. Let's get ready to rumble here. All right, question number 1 is going to be multiple choice because I got a little hint at it. Which global issue poses the greatest threat to U.S. agriculture commodity prices? Russian invasion of Ukraine, Chinese threat to Taiwan, South American expansion, European drought. You got 10 seconds. Don't think too hard. Don't think too hard. It's only, it's that prize was small, right, Christy? It was small. It's only like a $10,000 prize.
It's real small.
Yeah. All right. We chose the Chinese threat to Taiwan. We're going to tell you why later, whenever we present. But a good round answers there for everybody. Let's see if we can go to the next question. Well, first of all, we'll see who rocked it on this one. It looks like Bald Guy and Mac are at the top, but we've got more to come. The USDA has already compensated for lack of Ukraine grains oilseeds on the export market. In other words, has the USDA put the Ukraine impact into our balance sheet, true or false? Sterling's going to talk a lot about this here in just a second. Is that true or false? It says that they have already done it, and false is the right answer. So let's see who did well on that one. Bald Guy, you've played this game before and you've seen the answers. I know who you are. It's not me, by the way. Mac is next. Miller Bud right behind him. Let's go to the next question. This game is stupid. I would rather be watching paint. Right? True or false? Now, nobody can miss this, all right? Nobody can miss this. And that's what Erin Parks looks like right now. I see her on her picture there. She's all right. See, you guys gave me more credit than what I thought. And First Lady moves up. See, Christy, I know who you are on here, and I know that you think this is boring. All right. Where do you see national corn yields at? So we've looked at the first one is right at the 177 bushel per acre trend line. The blue is slightly above. The yellow is slightly below, and the green would be really far below, at least 5 bushels below trend line. And again, no right or wrong answer on this. Interesting. A lot of you are in the same boat. We kind of think that same thing. By the way, shout out to Sterling Smith. He nailed it in the last report. Sterling, you number 1 amongst that
number group. 1.
So awesome.
26 analysts. I hit the corn ending stocks number. I was only off by less than 1%. And that's, that number is going to get a little harder to predict here. And some of it, the western half of Iowa owes me a lot of money. I drove my freshly washed, detailed car Monday through 4 hours of rain. And anyone who's driven from Omaha through western Iowa knows it shouldn't take 4 hours to get to the other side of Des Moines, especially the way I drive in my Kraut wagon. But it took that long because it was rain basically the second I crossed the Missouri River the whole way almost to Iowa City.
So that tells you a little bit where Sterling's mind is as where the Iowa crop's going to be too. We're going to talk about that here in a second.
Well, we'll talk about that.
Here's true or false. 1 bushel yield variation affects production by 82 million bushels in regards to corn. So if we're 1 bushel high, we got 82 million extra. If we're 1 bushel below that 177, we subtract. Is that true or false? You got about 10 seconds to answer that. We're going to break down the balance sheet here shortly. We're going to zip through this thing. I told you this was going to be fun, right? Don't get on me yet. We're about a third of the way through. Most of you got that right. Let's see who leads here. Just for fun, Cowboy 49 is rolling, folks. I don't know who it is, but great job. Next question, true or false? The University of Illinois Farmland Value Index, 20.4% increase over the past 3 years. Now that's each year. Is that true or false? 20.4% increase in prices of land each year over the last 3. Is that true or false? I bet you guys all get this right. Because in the ASNA monthly marketing Kahoot games, there are no trick questions. Split. It's actually true. Land values, I want to say it went from a 398 to 479 on that index. We'll break that down here shortly. Cowboy stays at the top. Miller Bud coming up fast. True or false? Mike Toohill has a dog named Noodles. I don't know if that's a picture of your dog or not, Mike, but does Mike Toohill have a dog named Noodles? I'm saying he does. Is it true or false? He looks like a Doberman Pinscher guy to me, but that's true, Mike. Noodles is correct, right?
Yes, I'm bringing him over. Just give me 1 second.
Well, I don't know if they can see your screen, but we definitely can see him here in just a bit.
Yep.
So Cowboy nailed it. It looks like Miller Bud knows who Mike is because he got that one fast. And Cowboy 49 is on a streak. What percentage of the Farm Bill goes towards supporting crop insurance? 9%, 16%, 21%, 43%. ASNA has got a lot of. We took this from a slide presented by our general counsel about a month ago. A lot of you got that right, 6%. That may be a surprise. We're going to illustrate that shortly. First Lady's moving up. Mac stepping in there into third place. All right. All right. Prime interest rate peaked in the United States in 1980. True or false? This is one that we've talked about previously on there. And I believe that you got about 9 seconds left. And Sterling provided us with this data, I think, last month. And it was true. And Sterling, I think it's December of 1980. Is that correct? 20.2%?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at a chart of it right now, so it's kind of unfair. I can have the answers in front of you.
Well, I see how it worked.
We're going to talk about those interest rates here. I got a couple of really telling and interesting charts to show people. Cowboy
maintains First Lady. You know, it's funny how when I said, I was joking when I said that $10,000 cash prize. It's funny how First Lady has all of a sudden applied herself on this and is in second place now. So I don't know who First Lady might be, Christy, but I've got a pretty good idea. All right, next question. According to Mentor Purdue, how many consecutive years do we see prolific commodity prices, meaning really high? This would be back to back to back to back to back consecutively. Is it 2, 4, 6, or 12? I overuse this a lot. You guys already knew that. 7 of you got it right. Awesome job. Cowboy rolling. First Lady stays strong. That crop goddess coming up, though. We'll see what she can do. If it is a she, Sterling Smith once braved the icy Hudson River to save a cat from drowning. Is that true or false? True or false? This is a tough one because, Sterling, it is false. unless you got a
Sterling,
story
it swims like a bag of wet cement.
All right, well, there was 7 people that faith in you, just for what it's worth. More people got that wrong, right? But I love it. Let's see. Oh, that one threw Cowboy off, and Mac is now first place. Sorry, Cowboy. That's kind of a dirty trick on my part. in the ASNA Marketing Board worksheet, everybody's got these. If you don't, we want to get it. Which box does the ASNA team think is most important? Coverage level, APH, harvest price, or production cost? These are the worksheets. I'm going to show you one. Christy's worked real hard on getting these out, and it's something we've had for a lot of times. We're getting ready to revamp these. We got some exciting things to talk about there behind the scenes. I hope you guys get this one right. Yes, 5 of you got that right. We're going to talk about why I think going forward, that's going to be the most important component of helping you get your customers the right coverage. So I want to talk about that briefly. See if that threw anybody off. Crop Goddess is coming up. I tell you what, she is on fire here. Are we ready? We're almost there. Not much more. ASNA Edge believes carryouts on soybeans will be much larger in the 2022-23. Means we're going to have a lot more left over. Do we believe that? True or false? True or false? We believe that there's going to be a lot more beans left over this year than next. Is that true or false? That one is false. We're going to talk about that a little bit here shortly when we look at balance sheets. And that really threw things off. And this is coming down to the wire. This is going to be tough. If we had double jeopardy here, there's a chance for some people to win some prize. True or false? This guy presenting is not only handsome, but a genius. And that is a selfie that I took this morning. I switched out of those overalls not too long ago. This is the last question. So we're going to see who comes out on top. Oh, well.
No.
I feel the love, okay? Only one of you got it right. Now, I want to know who got this one right because I've got a bone to pick with you. Anyway, we'll see who came out on top. 3, Cowboy 49. Boy, 9 out of 14, Crop Goddess. She came from behind, too. And number 1, let's see who it is. It's Mac. So awesome job. Awesome job. I'm going to switch over. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Can we see Noodles one more time, Mike, before we get into a PowerPoint? Hey, I wasn't far off. For the life of me, I have not seen Noodles before. I did a pretty good job of picking out what I thought Mike's dog looked like.
A little white fluff ball.
We had you figured for a Doberman, Rottweiler kind of guy. But now we know what Mike's really like behind the scenes. Soft, got a lap dog, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, what we're going to do next is we're going to break these down really quick. I want this meeting to last as long as everybody finds interest in it. If you don't, tune out. It's okay. I don't mind at all. But I'm going to share. Christy, tell me where I'm at on my screen. Am I sharing right now? I'm not, am I?
Yeah. Sure.
I am.
Well,
Okay.
yeah,
Guys,
you're not sharing anything right now. So
can you see a PowerPoint?
there's nothing sharing right now, but
Okay.
you do have the ball. So
All right. I've got the ball. Let's share my screen and we're going to get right into it. All right. We keep things pretty informal here. So as you can tell, we are going to, I've added a few slides. So if you're in Nebraska and you saw this earlier, there's going to be a few things that we're going to talk about that we don't usually get a chance to. So going to knock this thing out of the park. Can you see my screen now?
we can.
All right, perfect. There's our dream team. That's us in real life. This is us whenever we've got our we change into the Superman outfits here, but this is really the Clark Kent version of us right here. It's kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis. Sterling, the first question, a little bit tough. We talked about the importance of China to our markets. Now, the China-Taiwan thing is not on the mainstream media as the top stories right now, but tensions are still high. This chart is one that it's a bar chart. It shows us China's impact of U.S. agriculture. Each one of these bars represents a year, and it's broken down between corn and soybean acres. The top part is what goes to China in regards to soybeans. And if you look over here to the acreage side of things, you can see that almost 11 million of our acres go into China soybean exports. So you can see where things are at there. And as of late, Sterling, a little bit of our corn goes to China as well. Tell us why you think China would be the top hotspot geopolitically right now.
Well, they are the unquestionably the biggest buyers of soybeans. There's no question about that, and today's export sales numbers reflect that. And this will be in the afternoon report, but they came in and they bought almost 800,000 tons of soybeans this week. Second, they have become a major participant in the corn market, and they are probably now our second biggest customer after Mexico. So if they were to drop off,
I want to make the point clear that if anything happens with the Chinese business, it means bad things for commodity prices in the U.S. It's very important to keep that in mind, even more so than anything going on in Ukraine. It's paramount. Last week, whenever we saw China and Taiwan exit the mainstream media top stories, if you notice how this works, it was about the same time that China stepped in and bought corn from the U.S., a little bit unexpectedly. So certainly maybe a turn of events, and things look a little bit brighter there. We mentioned the government not changing anything based on what's going on in Ukraine. I've got a couple of examples, and you guys have seen this in the past, but we'll concentrate on the picture on the left. 42 million metric tons of corn exported out of Ukraine, out of the Black Sea. And we keep asking ourselves, when will the USDA accommodate those numbers? Put some type of facilitation of how that's going to impact us. Are we going to pick up those exports or a portion of them someplace else? Sterling, what are your thoughts on why we haven't seen that big increase in exports out of the U.S. to make up for Ukraine? What's going on there?
Well, part of the reason is the price of corn. The price of corn for the U.S. is extremely expensive, and I think Europe right now is leaning on the stockpiles that they have. This is going to get a lot more interesting when we move into the fall, when you're not going to have the Ukrainian stuff in place, and you're going to have, I think, fierce global demand for both corn and soybeans. So when you put those together, the USDA is going to have to incrementally adjust for that. And two, if the USDA doesn't have knowledge or information, they're not going to necessarily act on it. So I think they're trying to figure out exactly, or at least a relative guess, as to just how much of that Ukrainian corn is going to make its way and where it's going to land, because where it's going to land is going to matter too.
So I'm jumping ahead, and Sterling, at any point in time that we want to switch screens and get deep into something, I want to do that. One of the questions that we asked was, where do you think these yields are at nationwide? And I have been on the road, literally. It's not been a virtual crop tour. I've literally been on the road and seen a lot of crop, as has Sterling over the last couple of days. Sterling went right through Iowa and Illinois on his trip to Chicago. Before I tell you what I've seen in the Western Corn Belt, Mike and I have been out there quite a bit in the last week. I've been in the Middle Atlantic states. I've been in the Southeast. Sterling, what did you see in Illinois and Iowa?
Well, in Iowa, I saw a lot of unevenness. I saw good-looking crops. I saw other cornfields that weren't even tasseled. So there's a lot of unevenness. It's going to be a big question. Did the rain, and we did get some much-needed rain, but by the same token, we're still way under for moisture. Here in Omaha, we are about 4 inches below where we should be. We started in May about 4 inches above. So yes, we got some rain, but is it enough? Is it too late? That's the other big question, and that's one for Mike. For soybeans, this may have helped us out, but I still don't think we can meet that USDA number that they put out on this last WASDE. Mike, what do you think about the most recent rains, and how much is that going to really move the needle, particularly in eastern Nebraska through Iowa, so let's say to Iowa City or so?
Yeah, I was writing about that this morning, Sterling. You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, there's a blue. As far as the rain, Sterling, I think it did help the corn that was alive, but unfortunately, there's a lot of corn that has already died in the Western Corn Belt. Here in Illinois, half-inch rain would do us a lot of good. But Iowa, again, looking at the Iowa map, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. The rain was helpful, but unfortunately, Didn't do a lot of good in the central part of the state as far as looking at the 30-day deficit. So it helped the corn a little bit, helped the soybeans a little bit, but probably still a net negative week as far as national.
You know, Mike, I know you're going to get into that a lot. We spent some road time out in Nebraska, and I know Liz and Ricky are on here, and probably some others from Nebraska there in their herd. At North Dakota, Minnesota, I drove across a lot of that late last week, and you know, not bad. It's just late, and I think if you're here from up there, you'll understand what I'm saying. I think that we started off with maybe I think we've probably met or exceeded the expectations that we started with such a wet spring, but it's going to be a challenge to really see those great yields up there, and a lot of that corn's just pollinated here in the last 14 days, so it's interesting. The beans really far behind. Talking to some farmers up there worried about frost. I know Mike had something he might touch on here in a bit. I've been in the southeast to start the week off this week, and you know that crop is a really bizarre crop. You'd see some really good cotton and soybeans, and then you'd see an unirrigated field of corn that was zeroed out without a yield that just burned out early in the year. But all in all, probably an average situation there. Middle Atlantic states look pretty strong, pretty amazing crop out there. There are some spots out there that are hurt, but all in all, that looks good. And in the Delta, we've gotten already several pictures and reports in our virtual crop tour from harvest starting down there, and yields are big. So it goes back to our common theme. Illinois and Iowa really got to carry the day for us to get close to that 177. Mike's going to tell us what he thinks here in a bit. When we look at the balance sheet, and I just want to break this down very quickly because this can be boring, it can be nerdy. This is from a private analyst that we follow. We've got these red numbers. We're going to look at corn in this section, soybeans in this section. That's what we're going to concentrate on today. We've got our acres up here at 81.94 million harvested. That's where we got the answer to that one question. We got a 177 yield. Productions at 14.5. A little bit imported into the southeast, 25 million. So we start off with a 16 billion bushel supply. That's carry in from last year. Here's where we're starting, and then all of a sudden we start to take away these numbers. We've got feed numbers here in the U.S. at 5.35 billion. These are only estimates. We've got ethanol at 5.2. And then we come down to exports, and we see exports maintaining themselves from last year at 2.4 billion, leaves us with a 1.469 carryout. Sterling, the first thing that we have to do is, and you nailed this, you changed this number. What was your number that you were so accurate with last week? How much did you?
Well, that was the corn ending stocks number, and I changed it down to 1.38. 8 was my number, and 1.380 I think was the USDA's number.
Now let me ask you a quick question on that. Did you change that to play the game, or do you really believe in your heart of hearts that's where we're at? Do you have any adjustment there?
I think that's where we're at right now. Where I got there, I did that just by shaving a little bit off the yields, just a little bit. I did not touch the demand side of the equation. I think coming into this fall, we have more questions about yields, and there's going to be more surprises than what we've ever had in the past because of, issues like how much fertilizer did we get, late planting of things, variable weather, all of that. And when I look at the drought monitor here on my other screen, that drought monitor does not indicate that we're going to have a record yield. Okay, you can't have a drought monitor that looks like this and have a record yield. That's fact. So the question is, how much more are we going to have to shave off? Then I look at the other side, that demand side of the equation. Basis is stout everywhere. That tells you that demand is good. Guess what? If demand is good at these prices, we're probably not going to be able to shave anything off of that demand side of that equation. So if you can't shave any demand, that just means ending stocks have to get compressed.
So interesting. You gain from that a couple different things. One, we're bullish demand over the next 6 to 8 months, barring any kind of big geopolitical blow up. it looks like basis is going to remain really, really strong. Of note, I know there's a couple on here from Kentucky. Kentucky, Nebraska, Texas, all areas where white corn is grown, all areas affected by some degree of drought this year. Watch the white corn basis very closely. Things could get really tight there. Likewise, in tightness, we move over to beans, sterling, and we see the balance sheet. Yes.
Hey, Brooks, hey, there's a question here real quick. I want to ask it.
Yeah.
There is a question about why on corn is it not 175.4 bushels per acre?
This is, so that's a good point. Once, what was it? What was the one number again? 170 what?
175.4.
Yeah. This one shows 177.
This would be a private estimate that we're using out there, Aaron, versus the updated number. So this would be more reflective of a trend line yield. Mike, you can help me out, but I believe trend line specifically this year is a 177.4. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the explanation. And I think what Aaron's referring to, sterling, that last number posted by the USDA in the WASDE report was 175.4, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
that's
good question.
yeah.
Good question. Going to switch over to soybeans, and I want to make sure we've got plenty of time for Mike. I'm not trying to hop around, but I want to dig into this because I know Sterling's got some points he wants to bring out here shortly. The bottom line is, I'm not going to bore you with the soybean numbers, but this 230 million carry out, there is a really good shot this is lower than where we were at last year based on this 51.5. And the reason we're not going to dig into this too much is because Mike's going to talk about this. And 51.5, it would appear, based on some of the stress that we've seen in southern Iowa, the western Corn Belt, this, and the fact that, Mike's pointed this out time and time again, we're 2 to 3 weeks behind our planting window. And agronomists more and more look to that early planting as a sign for bean yield. So we're going to quiz him on this. But I think we all know where the acres are at. I think we all know where exports are going to be, even on the low side here at 2.135 billion. So much rides on this yield. And we're going to put Mike on the hot seat here shortly for that. When we move to the Farm Bill, we've had a lot of people in Washington, D.C. from AgriSompo North America over the last month. This is a look at the 2018 Farm Bill. This was supplied by our General Counsel. And you can see 9% of the budget goes into crop insurance right here, this gray portion, 76 into nutrition. And the conservation side, 7%. This is definitely going to grow. This conservation side is definitely going to grow with the conservation stewardship programs, EQIP money being thrown in. So it is something to watch. There's a lot of posturing on each side of the aisle. Something that's interesting here is that a poll done, and it's got the source at the top, shows that this is the good news. Liberals, moderates, and conservatives tend to agree pretty closely on wanting to protect farmers from disaster and wanting to make crop insurance affordable. So that is certainly something that is good for everybody on this call. In the House, I wanted to point this out because Carolyn did a good job of putting this up for perspective. 50 members of the House serve on the committee. That point right there, that 16 members of the committee have a direct connection to production agriculture. That should motivate all of us to take a role in this, even as a constituent in your area. Even if you don't have a representative that serves on the Farm Bill, make that connection. Sterling, I'm going to count on you to shine right here. I only threw this up because it's a great intro. I've got a smidgen of concern here on farmland value before anybody runs out and thinks the sky is falling. Going to go over a couple recent farmland sales in Illinois and Iowa that I looked up. I saw one in Illinois, $22,800 per acre. That was not too far from you, Mike, just south of you. I saw one in Iowa at $24,000 an acre. And as far as I know from the computer, this was production agriculture type land. And Sterling, you created this chart right here, and it's probably not a great one. I'm going to stop sharing and kind of pass the baton over to you. Before I do that, though, I want to touch on this farmland value index. There may be some signs out there that we could look for a decline. Now let's put this in perspective. If we look for a decline from 22 and 23,000, even land prices going to 20,000, still make it a good investment a long term, especially somebody that's held it. The sky is not falling, but we do probably need to be prepared for a downturn over a period of years. I think it's likely. We combine this information supplies us with, and with interest rates, inflation. Question that I asked was that 20.4% increase. This is what's pretty crazy. From 2020 at 398 to today at 479, it's a 20.4% jump each year. So we've had this big escalation. Combining that, and you guys have all seen this. I know Erin's probably rolling her eyes at me right now, saying I've seen this chart a million times. This is from Indiana, and the four prolific years occurred after World War I, World War II, the 1970s, the ethanol boom, and then today we've got 2022 that is really up here pretty high on gross income. This is gross income for this adjusted by inflation from 1900. And I was not a believer in this until I really studied this, and it does look like there is a 4-year trend in these commodity prices, whether the cause of the prolific price was natural or unnatural. In other words, whether it was legislative or true demand. It looks like we find our way out of prolific price, or we find our way out of supply problems over about a 4-year period. So we're starting to see some signs line up that over the next 12 months, we may have some good pricing opportunity. Sterling, I opened up a can of worms there for you in regards to states, inflation, farmland. And over, I want to get back to the marketing board worksheet at the very end before we turn it to Mike. But tell us what we need to look for in regards to inflation, interest rates, farmland value index. I know that's something you've really looked at deeply over the last 4 weeks.
Okay. Christy, if you could throw me the ball, please. We're going to start with the first chart, and we're going to talk about interest rates.
Should be to you.
Okay.
Farmland auction in southern Indiana on September 10th. Curious on price and maybe more importantly, who buys it. Highly unlikely to be current producers, but more investors. It's just a comment that was made.
I think maybe all of the above on the buyers. The buyers that I have seen locally, I don't know who bought that ground that I referenced. I get on I think it's an Illinois First Ag Real Estate page that sends me updates on where things sell. You guys can Google that. But I know recently in my area, it's actually been producers buying the ground. So I haven't seen a lot of investors in my neck of the woods. I'm sure that's taking place in some places, but you got to remember, farmers right now have had those 3 prolific years. Cash is pretty good. They're probably borrowing a smaller percentage in operating lines than they have over the last
natural inclination for them to buy productive land, particularly when it is not, subject to becoming suburbia, let's say in the next 25 years. If the farmland is, if you're in Kane County, Illinois, if you're in DeKalb County, Illinois, Saunders, Dodge, Western Douglas, Sarpy County, Nebraska, places like that, that's going to be becoming suburbia. So you're making an entirely different kind of land play away from production, and I think that's where investor money is probably going to be more inclined to show up in droves, simply because that land is priced way above anything that it can be. The farm production is just something to help offset the fixed cost of that land until you can turn it into something else. So there's going to be a lag in farm prices. They're not going to fall immediately like we've seen house prices. My house has actually gone down in value the last 3 months, which was interesting. From 2 months after I bought it, it went up almost every week. And we've actually had a house that it actually took 2 weeks to sell in the neighborhood. So that element of things are going to be easing off. How high we go with interest rates is really the question. And the chart that I have up here, this is the Fed funds rate. This is what the Fed does to set rates. The first thing, we're going to go back to the crazy days of inflation. And if we look here, when the inflation started, we had the first batch in 1974. And that was the first oil embargo and the first energy shock. We had a lot of inflation, and then, it started to come down as we moved into, the mid-70s, back to interest rates came down and inflation eased. Then we had that later inflation with the second oil shock that we had coming in the late 70s and early 80s, and that's what pushed these interest rates up. Notice the Fed raised interest rates from 5% to 20%. Now, let's look at the second shock. Coming in here right before the great financial crisis, interest rates moved up. And if you do things by percentage, which is bad math if you do this, we saw interest rates, they peaked at 5% before everything blew up. And we had also a bit of an energy shock. We had energy prices a skyrocket. We had, new record highs in oil, new record high prices in gasoline and housing. But then interest rates came right back. Then coming into 2019, everyone likes to, try and tag administrations with all of this. Bad news. Don't do that. That's not right. Because you've noticed here we had another run up in interest rates, and then we had the pandemic and everything fell apart. And here we have the most recent run up in interest rates. So if you even do it by a percentage number, the chances of getting back up in here are really slim to none. In fact, really since let's go back to 1990, we've really never seen a Fed funds rate above 5%. So it would take continued and unprecedented energy shocks to take these prices up. I'm not saying you're not going to see some component inflation at the grocery store. You're going to. They're going to get even with you at the meat counter. That's not going to be a pleasant place to be. But the cost of moving the soup, putting the soup in a can, the cost of moving the pudding, and everything else has dropped. So that is going to end up balancing everything out. It's not going to get drastically better, but it's going to stop getting bad. And that means inflation numbers are going to ease. But what this means for farmland prices, we may be entering a new band where we're going to see prices elevated. I remember you go back to 2002 or so, I remember if you could you buy corn at 210 and you sold it at 240, you just had a tremendous year. It doesn't work like that anymore. If you do that, you've just had a tremendous day. So we're probably looking at grain prices holding a new pricing band. Some of that's going to be a function of inflation. Some of that is going to be a function of much stouter global demand. And two, are we going to be able to drive these balance sheets up to where we're going to be able to see those ending stock numbers get back above 1.5 billion? That's really the big question here.
Sterling, one of the contributors that that I threw a lot of warning signs out there, and you've kind of squashed one of those, and I get that interest rates may not be able to climb above a certain level in a certain amount of time. we're seeing input prices come down slightly as well on the farm. So seeing specifically in herbicide, I've seen herbicide prices come down substantially. Generic glyphosate may be down as much as 50–60% over the last 30–60 days. Hard to get a fertilizer price in my neck of the woods, but I was talking to a fellow up in North Dakota who had locked some urea in. Felt like it was a little cheaper price than what he paid last year for it. I don't think any of us have ever seen a time when input prices have come down and things have gotten better on the farm in regards to commodity prices. There have been probably a few, but should that scare us at all about 2023?
Okay, let's think about the pesticides. We had manufacturing issues. We had importation issues. We had a lot of moving parts that had nothing to do with the inflation that we saw in the 70s. We had specific problems. We can't make the stuff. We can't get people to work in the plants, et cetera, et cetera. We can't move it, the cost of moving it, and everything like that was driving that. I see a bifurcated situation with input costs. Can you see a chart here of something that's trading at $9.44?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, that's natural gas futures, okay? That's where we are right now. Any input cost that has to do with natural gas, there's going to be a problem compared to last year. If it doesn't have a lot of natural gas, it's going to trade on its own merits, meaning if we can produce the pesticides, those chemicals that are not associated with natural gas, and assuming we can work around our import problems, a lot of this comes from Russia, we can see that portion of the input costs stabilize and go down. If it's tied to natural gas, I'm going to show you, this is a chart right now of the futures for, well, here, I'll show you. December's really kind of the month we need to price that off for manufacturing of anhydrous and everything like that. This is where natural gas prices are right now. Now, I'm going to go back in time here. We're going to change this. We're going to go NGZ1. I'm going to move this back. I'm going to show you December natural gas. Actually, that's 2-1. This is December natural gas. Right now, we're trading 960. We look at December natural gas last year, we're trading 544. So, with the input costs, things are probably going to come down a little bit, and that's good in certain parts. In other parts, expect elevated prices again this year, and in some cases, meaningfully elevated prices.
Interesting. I know that a lot of farmers are going to be making these decisions over the next 90, 120 days, even for next year. We got a lot of things on our plate. A harvest that I think is going to drag on for a long time, and a lot of input decisions coming up. And we'll try to focus on some of those inputs, I think, in the meetings in October and November that we're going to have, just to see where things are at.
Yeah, this again is something. Make sure you're paying attention to the prices of this, and a lot of this can be localized. And if you see something that seems like a bargain, it probably is, because I don't really see a situation where this natural gas situation, prices may come down, but it'll be more of a trading drop than if we look here, the general trend is prices at best were just a little bit above last year, and we've elevated, and we have a market making new highs. So I would expect this trend to generally move higher. And some of that is going to be in part if we can start exporting natural gas again to Europe. This is something that's going to drive this up. This inflation in natural gas is something we're inheriting from Europe.
Sterling, I had a question come across as far as, kind of cut to the chase. What do we think on prices? I think we've talked about this for a while. Short term, maybe the next 12 months, you can see with demand where it's at, with some crop problems, or maybe not problems, but just slightly off where we need to be. I think both of us are in that bullish camp that things can be strong. However, I really like the idea for the next 12 months to be aggressive for that next year in conjunction with your policy. in conjunction with your protection levels. And that's one thing I want to show up here very quickly is this marketing board. Sterling or Christy, can you give me back the ball for just a second? This is an oldie, but it's a timeless piece that we've used at AgriSompo North America. And Christy, I think you were instrumental in getting this back up and going for the company. And this is just the good old fashioned. Don't worry, I'm not going to try to coach anybody on how to calculate a revenue program, revenue protection program. But you're going to notice something right up here in the upper left-hand corner, and that's cost of production. I'm gonna implore that if you are an agent that wants to have that great relationship with your customer, we've got to know cost of production, and this transcends direct. Understand their outlay of cash that goes beyond seed cost, you know, and in that regard, understand seed cost. Understand that if you've got a 60-40 crop share, understand that that's not a simple division out there, because a lot of times producers pay for their landlord's share of seed in that case in a lot of parts of Illinois, Indiana. If you've got land that's paid for, I know that if we went to the universities, they would say you've got to calculate an ROI on that. That's got to pay the farmer. A lot of farmers don't look at that in that regard. They look at cash outlay. So we've really got to look at this cost of production and nail it down. Does it cost cell phone for employees? Does it cost to have employee insurance now? This cost of production, when we look at every penny that's paid out, it's staggering. I think we would all be blown away with where it's at. In reality, I know I had some budgets early in the year on herbicide, insecticide, fungicide, and we just blew those out of the water. It's expensive to farm right now. And if you don't know this right here, it's really hard to guide your producer through what they need as far as their policy. And then when it comes to marketing, we're really gonna concentrate on this. We've got some awesome stuff in the works. I don't know what we're gonna call it, but some of you are familiar with the old profit matrix and super matrix. We're working behind the scenes to get the base product out here within the next few months. And beyond that, we've got some pretty exciting stuff that's coming that's really going to help you in regards to the expense side of things. So we're deep into this. This is taking a lot longer than I thought, but all good stuff, and we kept everybody's attention, I think. Mike, you're on board. I thought you would be the bulk of this meeting, and I'm fortunate. But you've got some important stuff to share. I think we're at the time of year where what you've got to say is going to have a big impact on some of the decisions we've got to make over the next 60 days when it comes to farmers moving corn and soybeans in the fall. So tell us what we need to know as far as agronomy goes.
Thanks, Brooks. I'll try to be brief here today, but also give you plenty of information. Have no trouble moving along pretty rapidly today. I wanted to talk about the U.S. crop as I see it today based on August 18th. And again, Brooks, Sterling, feel free to interject as I roll along here today. As we start today, if I can get my computer to advance, turn this again. Just one more time. Try this one more time. I'm going to reboot and get going here. All right. Now we're going. I want to talk first of all about the haves and have-nots as of today. Sterling talked about his drive across Iowa and into northern Illinois this week. And as I look at our 30-day percent of normal maps, I still see plenty of concern there. I look at the reds. That's anywhere from a couple percent to 25% of rainfall over the last 30 days. And looking at that map, I still see big problems in Iowa, especially the drought kind of moved from northwest Iowa down into central Iowa. And also look at that big bullseye in western Illinois. Got a good crop in western Illinois, but that's going to maybe take a little bit of that top end away. Also got some problems developing in North Dakota. Brooks talked about that being a late planted, slow to develop crop, and North Dakota showed up on the drought monitor. And I really feel bad for those folks down in Kansas. They plant their corn early. A lot of that corn is already burnt up. They plant the beans late in the hopes of catching some late rains, and right now Kansas is in a world of hurt. So again, like Sterling talked about, and we'll look at the drought monitor map next. As far as 30-day rainfall deficits, it doesn't look very good in most areas west of the Mississippi. That's this morning's drought monitor. Again, the main area of concern is this increased drought in central Illinois. We're still going to have a good crop, maybe take some records off the table, and really watch what happened up here in North Dakota. All that drought just developed last week. Kansas is a mess, Nebraska is a mess, and Iowa's still pretty rough looking on the drought monitor. But one thing I'm learning this year, especially as I'm doing more traveling and doing more of a national agronomist versus a central Illinois agronomist, soil quality makes a big difference as far as what dry means to a crop. And here's a pretty good case in point. I know the Iowa corn ratings have been dropping, but the Iowa corn crop as of Monday's report was still 66% good to excellent, despite 67% of the state being on the drought monitor. So again, going to grow some pretty nice crops in Iowa. But like Sterling said, does that look like a record 205 bushel per acre Iowa crop based on that map? And my agreement would be to Sterling, that would be a no in that case. I want to talk a little bit about drought. Here's some boots in the ground pictures. This was Brooks and I in Nebraska, southeast Nebraska, that was not officially on the drought monitor last Monday. And that's what their crops look like, pretty tough looking. And going back to our home farm in McLean County, Illinois, we are under moderate drought on the drought monitor on this morning's update. And that's what our crops look like. Sterling, Brooks, anybody know what that field's going to make? Just kind of looking at the corn, any guesses on that? I'd say 250 minimum, potentially 300. And whenever mom sunflowers are twice as tall as me, we've got a big crop coming. So the drought monitor doesn't always tell the whole story, especially on those soils that have very good moisture holding capacity. Here's some pictures I took on Monday. Some April 29th planted corn, very good grain depth. Goes back to Sterling's question, would rain help that crop? Absolutely. A half-inch rain would pretty well finish that crop out, and that's probably a 250 bushel field. And that's what that same spot of the field looked like back in mid-June when the crops were rolling up. All the rain it took to get that was a soaker in late June, 2 inches of rain, a couple half-inch rains in July, and now a couple inches in August, and that crop is made. So again, soil quality makes a big difference as far as trying to figure out this national yield. But again, rain probably not going to help a lot of these crops. This is some pictures that came out of southeast Nebraska. That corn's barely holding on to life. If that field would get a half-inch of rain, it may buy it a day of life, not too much more than that. And here's some corn in southwest Iowa, like Sterling says, probably not going to help that corn much. So again, you always take rain before the corn dies. But this corn here is so far gone, not going to make a big difference. But it will help the grain that looks nice and healthy, like some of the corn I showed from my home farm. One thing we have to consider too, lots of dryland corn burnt up way before the rains came through last week. Most common in the non-irrigated corn in Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, and many harvested dryland fields in Texas have been very low yielding. So again, a lot of problems with the dryland crop in most areas west of the Mississippi. And we talked a little bit about Kentucky. I think there's some Kentucky people on the call here today. A lot of that early planted corn in Kentucky was burning up, had pollination issues, got some late rains, but again, not really going to help a lot of that corn either. I think that's some white corn there, Brooks. So again, some issues with the white corn market that Brooks brought out. So kind of putting a number to that 22 crop is going to be very difficult with all the variability. I think Iowa's going to have to come through and come in at least 200. Again, they're at a record 205. Now, I don't see the 205. In fact, I have a hard time seeing 200. So really watch Iowa harvest results. And looking at the Illinois numbers, Illinois is going to have to come in probably 208, 210 to have a chance to exceed the 175. And I think Illinois still has a shot for that, but I don't think Iowa's got a shot at the 205. And I'll share my current thoughts on U.S. yield in a few slides. I'm going to talk just a little bit about tar spot. This is a positive for the U.S. corn crop. Home in McLean County, tar spot was everywhere last year, but tar spot loves a lot of foggy days. We've been getting a little dew, but no fog. It loves high humidity, and it loves 9 inches of rainfall, and very little of the Midwest has had 9 inches of rainfall in the last month. So again, I don't think tar spot's going to be a major driver. There's also less southern rust, less disease in the corn. I am going to be down in southern Illinois walking some fields on Monday down in the St. Louis area. It'll be interesting to see as far as what we see for disease. But on our farm, we sprayed all the corn except for a couple patches, and it's hard to see the difference. So again, I don't think disease will be a big player this year, so that is a plus for yields. What about fungicide utilization? Acres were sprayed where the corn looked good, primarily a function of tar spot risk and also the high prices. Acres were sprayed in lower numbers in areas that had pollination issues because it wasn't much of a crop there. But overall, I suspect the U.S. corn fungicide utilization was a little higher than average. So another plus for the corn crop. What about the hot days and nights on reproductive crops? As an agronomist, the worst day for a corn crop, and some of the folks in the Western Belt sure saw this, Nebraska, Kansas, Texas. You get a day when it's 100 degrees, no humidity. That's just hard on a crop, especially with some wind and limited soil moisture. And again, intense sun magnified the effects of daytime heat. And that explains why we're seeing all those tough looking dryland fields coming out of the Western Belt. And one thing too, that may be taking a little more yield away in some of the eastern areas, you start putting together 3, 4, 5, 70-degree lows in a row. And that's a little hard on yield because the plants don't get a chance to rest at night. So all the days they're collecting photosynthate. When it's hot at night, there's putting more of those sugars into cooling the plant than filling. So we got to watch those nighttime lows. So that may cause a little disappointment in the Eastern Belt where it's been a little bit warmer. Looking back at July temperatures, most of the damage was done out here in the Western Belt where it was pretty hot and not bad temperatures here in the East. This is our average daily highs. And looking at our nighttime lows, again, for the heart of the Corn Belt, the I-States, not all that bad of a map. But again, go back to the problem areas, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri. Some of those areas were hurt because of hot July temperatures. And what's it looking like for August? Early August was actually pretty warm throughout most of the major corn producing areas, even through Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, Ohio. That's maybe some of that hidden yield loss we may see because of those hot nights, but hopefully that map is going to cool down some. It's cooled off, like Brooke said earlier when he opened the meeting. We've had some pretty nice weather the last couple of days, so hopefully that map will cool over the next couple of days. I'm going to talk just as I wrap up on corn yields. As Sterling was driving across Illinois, what he probably noticed was there was no holes in the field. So we have that later planting season, very little spring rains that were heavy. So again, we get to harvest all the fields. Crop is still very green in Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And again, very healthy. So that's probably one of the reasons why Illinois has probably got a chance at a record crop despite showing up throughout central Illinois in the drought monitor. What about August rains and grain fill? This goes back to Brooks' earlier question and Sterling's question about did the rain help the crops? So what you need to think about is full dent. Kernel dry matter is only 60% of maximum. So if you got a cornfield that looks pretty green like the corn on our farm, it's at full dent. I've got 40% to go. So those kernels can get massive with more rain, good sunshine, cool temperatures. And if you're just at 50% milk starch line, there's still 12% to go. So rain can help a crop as long as it's alive. But again, corn that's dead, it's not going to come back from the dead. So again, my answer to that, yes, August helps corn that's alive and healthy. Not going to do much for the corn that's dead. It's just going to magnify some issues as far as potential aflatoxin. What about the production map? Here's what the map looked like from NAS on the August crop report. All of the states here in blue got better than last year. All the states in red got worse compared to last year. And again, like Brooks has been saying in the virtual crop report all year, really watch Iowa. I don't see how Iowa can have a record crop at 205. Maybe I'll be wrong. And I think the biggest states that underestimated as of today is Illinois. I'd put Illinois at 210 as of today. So my number, based on what I know today, despite the rains that came through parts of Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri this week, I actually dropped my run number down by about a bushel. I'm at around 174.5 today. I just got a couple minutes on soybeans before I turn the ball back over to Brooks. But the three main yield stories are going on right now. Number one is planting date. Number two is fungicide, insecticide utilization. And finally, late July and August rains. And bottom line, late July and August rains kind of trump the top two. Looking at soybean planting by planting date this year in the U.S., only 12% of the U.S. soybean crop was planted prior to May 8th. That suggests there were not enough early glean planted to hit the 51.9. That is a current national yield per acre. So again, planting date suggests that we didn't get the beans in time to have a 51.9. What about fungicide utilization? If we're going to have a big bean crop, this is a plus for you. Even where beans were looking a little bit tougher, we all know the beans can do a lot of good with some August rains. So a lot of acres were sprayed with fungicides this year, and more growers sprayed stress beans, I suspect there was a record number of soybean acres treated with a fungicide insecticide. So that is a plus for soybean yields. Another benefit too, throughout Illinois anyway, in my travels this week, I'm seeing a little bit of white mold, a little bit of sudden death, but it's a very healthy crop. Again, looking forward to driving down to Southern Illinois Monday to see how they've done because they've had more moisture. And again, I'm going to bring this map back one more time. This is my go-to map for predicting soybean yields. And again, despite pretty good rains in northwest Iowa through Missouri, still is a pretty tough looking map to trying to say we're going to grow 51.9. Again, all these reds are anywhere from 1 to 25% of rain over the last 30 days. Again, look at that big bullseye in western Illinois. It's pretty dry in my backyard, despite nice looking crops on the farm. And really watch the state of Kansas. Again, that is a late planted soybean crop. They plant late to take advantage of late rains. And they're not getting the rains in Kansas. And most of the moisture that was supposed to hit Kansas this week has actually went a little bit south, more toward Oklahoma, down through Arkansas. And again, keep a pretty good eye up here in North Dakota. Trending drier in North Dakota. We don't need that because the North Dakota bean crop is a late planted crop that needs some moisture to have those beans finish. A couple more positives for bean crop. We've had pretty good sun. Sun's always good for soybeans. And again, I talked about this early, just not seeing a lot of disease here, at least locally in my travels here this week. As I wrap up my slides here on soybeans, the national yield came in at a high 51.9. But again, remember that August survey was based on satellite imagery and primarily farmer reports. I know most of the farmers in the dry areas were a lot more optimistic about yields in July than they were today. I know talking to the farmers at the Nebraska grower meeting last week, pretty discouraged with their both corn and soybean yields due to lack of rainfall. To hit the 51.9, I think Iowa needs to come in close to the 50, and I think that is possible. But Illinois is set at a record 66 today. With all that dry weather throughout central Illinois, western Illinois, I don't know if we can hit a 66. I doubt it based on planted date. I think Illinois can't drop more than a few bushels. We're going to have to watch that crop drop. And again, the states I'm really watching, Kansas, North Dakota, central Iowa. And again, watch central and western Illinois. A half-inch rain would do a good job helping that crop finish. We get no rain. Probably going to take a little bit of top end. And my number today, despite the recent Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri rains, I dropped down to a 50.8. As I wrap up here today, again, I talked about this briefly. Kansas was hoping for a pretty nice rain over the next 7 days, but they pushed all that moisture down into Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas. That's really not going to do much for the bean crop. Not much rain to help finish those beans for the guys in Nebraska who got missed. Not much rain in South Dakota, and maybe a little bit of rain coming up here in parts of North Dakota. And again, maybe a little bit of beneficial rains from eastern Iowa through northern central Illinois and Indiana. So again, that's what the 7-day forecast looks like. And not much news in the 6 to 10 day outlooks. We turn a little bit cooler, but a little bit drier up in the northern belt. And by the 8 to 14 day outlook, rain's not going to be making a whole lot of difference once we start working our way into towards September. At that point, I'm going to wrap up here today, turn it back over to Christy Brooks and Sterling. Again, my thoughts, despite the rains this week, I think the crops dropped a little bit. I'll write about that for today's VCT. So again, always nice to have rain on the windshield. But again, looking at the drought map, looking at the 30-day map, going to be hard to hit the numbers that the August numbers from Napa, in my opinion.
Thanks, Mike. Lots of good stuff there. It's kind of interesting, that 50.8 number that you've got pegged. I think you did a really good job of analyzing that state by state. And I know from traveling around my home state of Illinois, I think you kind of pegged things right on the nose with what we're seeing in our own backyard. Sterling, we're a little bit over the hour mark, but we've still got good attendance. Any Sterling's top 3 things to look out for over the next 6 months? Wrap us up with hot topics that you see from either a economic standpoint, commodity standpoint.
Well, first thing, we're going to look at soybeans. Now, they cut acres on the WASDE and they raised production. They also cut corn yields and raised soybeans at the same time, which, if you think about it on the face of it, doesn't make a lot of sense. On the soybeans had to do with them cutting yields, and it was a guy with a spreadsheet, not necessarily with a tractor. So I'm in Mike's camp here. If we hit 50.8 on the soybeans, that's going to take, basically 100 off that carryout and puts us back to where the market is going to be feeling bullish, because we were very, very strong leading up to that report, and the soybeans are what put the sandbag on things. If that soybean number had been unchanged, we'd probably see another 30, 40 cents in December corn right now. The second thing is, these grain prices, just looking at the macro, probably shouldn't have been going up for most of this rally, because if we look at the strength in the dollar has been going up most of the time when these grains are going up, which is a little bit contradictory. Now, if we get another batch of reasonably good inflation numbers, and to do that, it's real simple. Just watch crude oil, and if it stays below 100, our next batch of inflation numbers aren't going to be that hot. That's going to mean that interest rates probably aren't going to be, they're going to go a little higher, but probably not a lot higher. At some point, you know, this trade has gotten awfully crowded with the long dollar. If we begin to see the dollar drop, it'll definitely help wheat prices. And it will definitely take some downward pressure off of these grain prices, and that will allow us to see prices move up. The next thing is, when you're marketing, let's assume we've got those first two things right and we push this corn back up near, around, or above 7. Be wary of prices getting stale. This is what happened the last time. Corn got up above 7. The funds couldn't make any more money. So what do they do if they're not making any more money? Well, they leave. That can happen again, and make sure you're ready to be in place and do things incrementally, because we still have very good prices. And keep an eye on the December 3s, because we're going to have some very good prices there to take advantage of. From a macro point of view, we're all energy traders. That's the bottom line. As long as crude oil stays under control, we shouldn't have too many problems on the stock market. We shouldn't have too many problems with interest rates. And along with that, we could probably see a bit of an easing dollar, which would actually be good for the stock market, which in turn is actually good for everything else. We don't want that thing crashing and causing a bunch of unassociated problems spilling over into markets where it may or may not matter, but only matters when it's a negative situation. Finally, the last 2 weeks in August and the first 2 weeks of September very much spell what we're going to be doing in the equity market. So if this rally continues, this could be a repeat of 1970. In 1970, we had a big market sell-off the first half of the year. We finished the year unchanged. And again, from a macro point of view, a healthy stock market takes a lot of pressure and covers for a lot of other sins in the economy, and it might keep our little friends in Washington a little more at bay with trying to monkey around with things. So, surprises on yields. Be wary of the soybean number. I'm not convinced the market buys it, and based on what I've seen, a lot of variation in beans, but all the beans I see look really short and squatty, which I know that's not necessarily any indicator on yield, but they all seem a little bit behind. And the weather here, it's not going to be as hot, thankfully, but I don't know how much water is actually going to fall from the sky. It looks very mixed for the next 2 weeks here.
Well, good
also,
thoughts.
everybody sign up for the podcast.
Sign up. Send me some pictures for the virtual crop tour. We're going to wrap that crop tour up this week and next week. And then it's really a challenge once combines start running to get much participation. We're going to come back in October, and hopefully we don't have a scary yield virtual crop tour. We're going to do a summation there. But the next couple of weeks, if you could snap me some pictures, give me a few bullet point comments, I would appreciate it. I know that it's tougher and tougher to get those in later and later in the summer, but I appreciate your participation. With that, Christy, we have packed as much as we can pack in an hour and 15 minutes or 18 minutes. And I appreciate everybody being good sports. Christy, if we can get some prizes out there to our winners. I don't guess we really know who those winners are, but we can probably hunt them down. But I appreciate everybody being good sports on the game. I wish we could be on here for 2 to 3 hours to pack information. You can tell we all love what we do and have a lot of fun doing it. So with that, have a great week. And Christy, I'll let you kick us off.
Yeah, we do. We want to thank you guys so much for being a part of today's meeting, and do want to remind you about that virtual crop tour. So make sure that you are participating in that. Did put a lot of notes in the chat. So Please, if you have any questions, just reach out to us at marketinginfo@sompo-intl.com. In September, we have like a week of meetings. So just so you go ahead and note, the week of September 12th, we have the WASD on that Monday, and then that Thursday, we have our ASNA Edge marketing meeting. So like that whole week is just meeting with us. You don't want to miss that. So make sure that you just go ahead and put that in your calendar now. That Monday, we'll have the WASD, and Thursday will be the marketing meeting at 9 o'clock. So go ahead and put that in your calendar now. Okay, it looks like somebody's giving me a question. Let me see what that is. Let me check real quick. Oh, no, just thanks. Okay, thank you. Thank you guys for participating. Really appreciate it. And Chris, thank you for telling me who you are. I appreciate it. We're going to do what we can to get you guys some prizes out here soon, I promise. Do let me know who you are so I can get those out, because I would love to do that for you. Go ahead and shoot me an email there to that marketing info at sompo-intl.com, and we will take care of that. Thanks again. We will have a copy of this recording for you at on our YouTube page, and that will be available here very soon. It will either be at the end of the day today or tomorrow, so that you can go back and watch that, share that with your customers. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day.